Nobody thought Atlas had a reason to stay. Then the night came that proved everyone wrong. They thought their German Shepherd had turned dangerous. They were completely wrong. The first time it happened, Mason was sitting on the kitchen floor eating a cracker, and Atlas crossed the room in 4 steps and lowered his muzzle to within inches of the boy's face. No warning, no growl, just that large black and tan head descending with a certainty that looked, from across the kitchen, exactly like aggression. Priya screamed. Her husband Joel came running. Atlas backed away, sat down, and looked at them both with an expression they would spend 3 weeks misreading. Mason was 14 months old. Atlas was 4. He had been in their home since before the baby, a working-line German Shepherd from a breeder in central Ohio who used words like drive and threshold when she handed over the leash. He had never shown anything that looked like a problem, not once. He slept at the foot of their bed. He waited at doorways. He was the kind of dog that made visitors say he must have been trained by someone serious. And Joel would nod, even though the most serious thing Atlas had ever done in their house was figure out how to open the pantry door. The behavior started on a Tuesday in March. Mason had a cold. Not serious, just a low-grade viral fog that moves through every household with a small child in winter. He was tired, clingy, eating less than usual. Priya was a pharmacist. 9 years at a hospital system, which meant she had a clinical framework for almost everything. She knew what a toddler cold looked like. She knew what it resolved into. She was not worried. Atlas was. He began doing it every time Mason made any sound of distress. A bump, a fuss, a short cry, and Atlas was there before the echo finished, that muzzle dropping toward the boy's face, hovering, inhaling. Priya started keeping count without meaning to. 7 times on Wednesday, 11 on Thursday. Each time she pulled him back. Each time Atlas allowed it, and then when her attention shifted, drifted back. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. By Friday, she had a theory. Atlas was resource guarding. She had read about it. The arrival of an infant disrupts a dog's established hierarchy, and some animals respond by fixating on the child as a territorial object. She shared this with Joel on Friday evening, while Mason slept and Atlas lay at the nursery door, refusing to come when called. Joel looked it up on his phone and found a forum post that confirmed it. They agreed. This was textbook. They had caught it early. They would manage it properly. Saturday morning they put a baby gate across the hallway. Atlas sat on the far side of it and pressed his nose through the bars toward Mason's room, and did not move for 2 hours. Joel added a second gate. Atlas sat between them and made a sound neither of them had heard from him in 4 years. Not a whine. Something lower. Something that seemed to come from a different part of his body entirely. By Sunday, Joel's sister had offered to take Atlas for 2 weeks while they worked with a trainer. The decision was made the way parental decisions get made when one parent has professional expertise the other defers to. Priya had the framework. The framework said separate them. The overnight bag was by the door. At 11:47 that Sunday night, Mason woke with what should have been a routine cry. Priya checked the monitor. He was standing in the crib the way he did when he wanted to be picked up. She gave him 3 minutes. The cry didn't change. She went in. Atlas hit the baby gate so hard the mount pulled from the drywall. Priya turned. The gate was down. Atlas was in the hallway moving past her into the nursery, and she grabbed for him and missed, and he was at the crib with his front paws on the rail and his face over the side, and Mason stopped crying. Not the way crying stops when a child is comforted, the way it stops when something else is happening. She turned the overhead light on. Mason's lips were wrong, a color she recognized from her pharmaceutical training before she recognized it as a mother. She reached into the crib. His skin was damp and cool, not the heat of a sick child, but something else. He looked at her, and his eyes weren't tracking. She called 911 before she understood what she was doing. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The pediatric emergency physician at Riverside Medical was named Dr. Constance Ahern. She had practiced for 17 years. She used the word critical only once, and then switched to language that was slower and more deliberate. the language doctors use when they need parents to stay functional. Mason's blood glucose was at 33 milligrams per deciliter. Normal for a toddler is between 70 and 110. At 33, the brain has already begun rationing its fuel. The margin between where Mason was and permanent neurological consequence was, Dr. Ahern said, not large. She asked what had made them check on him. Joel said, the dog. Dr. Ahern nodded once as if this was not the first time she had heard that sentence. She explained that hypoglycemic events in toddlers frequently follow viral illness because the body depletes its glycogen stores while fighting infection, and small children cannot communicate the symptoms. The breath chemistry changes measurably before any visible sign appears. The compound is called isoprene. Dogs register it at concentrations that no clinical instrument currently deployed in a home setting can detect. She paused and then said what Priya would think about for a long time afterward. He was at the crib before you were. He has probably been reading this for days. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. They brought Mason home on a Tuesday. He wore a small, continuous glucose monitor on his left arm. Atlas was already home, returned the morning of the discharge, and when Priya opened the door, he walked past her, the way he always did, and went directly to the nursery and lay down on the floor beside the crib. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, then she sat down on the floor beside him. He put his head in her lap and exhaled once, long and slow, and did not move again for the rest of the night. The glucose monitor on Mason's arm blinked green in the dark above them both, and Atlas lay still with his eyes open, watching the small light in the place he had never stopped trying to reach. The next story on this channel involves a dog who refused to let a family walk through their own front door. What he had found inside would take a fire investigator 40 minutes to explain.